I was going to begin my story, but I'm going to start a little bit earlier. I want to begin my story by saying that I was an unmarried single dad, and I entered law school with a 1.5-year-old. There were two of us in 1973 out of 180 who had children. One had an 18-year-old, and I had my son. And right after law school, to my Italian immigrant mother's chagrin, I got a job teaching carpentry at the height of desegregation in the Boston Public Schools, which I did for 11 years. And I saw people throwing bricks at buses with little babies in them. It was like Mississippi was in the 60s. And I realized the very first day that those working class kids were every bit as bright as the middle class kids I was just in law school with. So the arc of the last 34 years have all been from that paradox. But what the prior speaker just reminded me of was the day that I told my parents back in the Bronx that someone and I were going to be having a baby out of wedlock in 2 weeks. And I had a lot of trouble developing the courage to tell them. And what happened was that it was a meal that we sat down to which no one ate a bite of. And my mother, second language being English, after a couple of minutes of silence said, "Well, this is a very bitter pillow to swallow." And she loved him the most, actually, as I do too. So I called this integrating dualities and paradox therapy because there is a therapeutic value to paradox. Like you have a school, like we do, in which when you come in the front door, there's a cigarette machine from the mid-50s, and you say, there's no cigarette machines anywhere, and why is there one in the entrance to a school? And then you look at it and you realize that some students and an art teacher and an engineering teacher repurposed it so that there's little blocks of balsa wood the size of and weight of cigarette packs with student art on it, and you can buy student art. So the paradox is, a cigarette machine, and then, the therapeutic part. So this is what happens when you integrate dualities, and I'm going to use that as a theme because most schools are based on a misprediction of who can and who can't do what, and that misprediction, as it is in our society, is based on ethnicity, social class, gender, language ability, and now in schools, unfortunately, a drastic over-reliance in standardized test taking. So when you're creating a school, you don't want to be mispredicting. And it's not just what you put in, it's what you let in. That's another duality. And so you don't let in a lot of different things. You don't have a PA system. You don't have adults' bathrooms and kids' bathrooms. You just have bathrooms. There's hundreds of things that you don't let in. And another duality is hard on the content, soft on the people. You're just, you're really going to be critical of each other's work in terms of effective criticism, and you're looking to hold out what's really, really good work, or you're going to be really soft and encouraging on what everybody is doing. So for me, the attorney in me has to begin by saying that we had Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896, in which the Supreme Court said separate but equal. We had Brown versus Board in 54, in which they said together and equal, and it is there are few who could doubt that we're less together and less equal in our schools than we ever have been. We have apartheid schooling in America. The narrative for integrating our schools has virtually vanished. So one of the things you might want to do is create a school which uses zip codes as a basis for selection, purely zip codes, nothing else. No transcript, no letter of recommendation, and zip codes are just a number, but zip codes do predict. They don't mispredict. They predict socioeconomic status exquisitely, and they're just a number. They're racially neutral on their face, and they predict ethnicity almost as well. You want to integrate head and hand, as Dewey said. You want to use both, and you want to use both well. MIT's motto, as a matter of fact, is head and hand. You want to integrate technical and academic teaching and learning, a lot like MIT does, as a matter of fact, where you're mostly getting rid of narrow skill training for specific occupations because kids at the age of 16 and 17 don't know in Vogue programs what they want to be for the rest of their life. In fact, if someone had told me when I was 16 years old that I'd be spending my adult life in high schools, I would have ended it right there. So what you want to do is you want to take the pedagogy of technical education, which is it's applied, it's expeditionary, it's experiential, it's group learned, it's team taught, it's authentically assessed. You make it, you bake it, you shape it, and we're getting to a place in this country where we have to re-remember something we forgot in 2007, 2008, which is that moving money around does not create value. inventing and making and building and shaping and doing things does. So you want kids to be in a school in which they are making things. And then when you make a school like that, instead of having the national average of 17% of the undergrads in the United States major in science, technology, and engineering and math, you have 37% of your graduates doing it. And it's the magic in that is simply because they're in a high school in which they're getting to behave like biologists, behave like engineers, behave like mathematicians. And they say, this is kind of good, this is what I want to do. So another duality is production and consumption. The purpose of technology in schools is not just to consume technology. Kids are consuming technology all over the place. The purpose is in producing and using technology. I'm going to show a 2-minute example of that towards the end of this brief talk. So you want people making things, and you want them curating it, and you want them holding it up, and you want to see the craft and the beauty of what they did. There was an image here of the Salk Institute. Louis Kahn designed the Salk Institute. When he gave his lectures at Yale, he used to talk to a brick. He'd put it up, he'd put it right there on the stage, and he'd say, "Brick, what do you want to be?" And the brick would say, "I want to be a wall." I said, what about an arch? Have you considered being an arch, right? Right? So another duality is the why and the how. If you're working with teachers, if you're working with students, showing them how to do something when you have leapt over whether and why they should be doing it, I think is you do at your peril. It's all about motivating people from within to actually have an interest in wanting to do it. Another duality, the distinction between personalization and individualization. Individualization is something that, like a computer might do to see oh, you are interested in buying such and such an item, and you see that thing come up. That's individualized. Personalized meaning it comes from you, it comes from your own story, it comes from what is a question that you really have, an internal question that you have, and you're in an environment and you're in a school in which you're able to pursue that perplexity. One of the things I really love about the architects I heard today, and engineers, and artists, what they all have in common is they're perplexed. They're all perplexed about how they can do it better. And perplexity precedes engagement, and engagement precedes learning. So we want to have an environment in which students feel perplexed. You want to integrate secondary and post-secondary. Last year, 34% of the students who successfully graduated from high school in the state of California took the A through G courses that allowed them to even be considered to attend this University of California. How about creating a school, which some of us have, in which 100% of the kids take those courses, because that's the only way that you can be there. Integrating school and community, having students go out on internships, having people from outside come in. What about having a display of student work a few weeks ago in which 3,000 people came to see what the students had done? The school didn't ask them to come, the kids did. They told their neighbors, their nephews, their uncles, their aunts, their grandparents, come see what I did. Make the work public, curate the work. Stability and churning is another duality. Having worked in a 350-year-old public high school, there's an overemphasis on stability, where we have a very ossified structure in education. Bruce Alberts, head of the National Academy of Science, shows a great slide of a knot of vectors, seniority, tenure, parent association, elected school board, which is an anomaly in the United States. Other countries don't have one. A lot of people don't realize that. Textbook publishers, standards, testing. He said, this is what is known as a chemistry, as a system in perfect equilibrium, and then people kind of nervously laugh, and he says, yes, you can be dysfunctional and stable at the same time. So what we really need is churning. We need some change. We need some dynamism in the school environment. You have to be able to do it well as a student or as an adult and describe it well. So when a teacher says, how do you judge whether I'm a good teacher? We judge by the quality of your students' work. If it's sophisticated work that's well done and well displayed and it's worth doing and learning things that are worth learning, you've done well. Hire for disposition, train for skill. Another duality. Hire for disposition means that if someone doesn't have social change in their gut, this is not something that we can really provide. Or I'm not saying that no one could provide it, but not in an environment like ours. And so we need that, and then we can make you get better as a teacher. We all need to get better as a teacher. Another duality is model and example. Someone once said we're a model. Well, we're not a model. Webster's definition of a model is a non-functioning replica. I mean, a model A model suggests completeness. It's not complete. It's always incomplete. It's always imperfect. That's why it's an example of something. You don't want to replicate. You want people to emulate. Another duality is the difference between most schools in which the teacher does the explaining and the student's doing the listening, and you want to create an environment in which, as you're going to see here, the student is doing the explaining and the adults are doing the listening. And you want to keep it simple. You don't need to have it be overly complex. You don't have to have a lot of rules. If you treat people with respect, you don't need a lot of rules. As Sir Giovanni once said, complex structures beget simple behaviors, and simple structures beget complex behaviors. Charlie Mingus said, it's easy to make the simple complicated. True genius lies in making the complex simple. So the challenge, therefore, is to transform content, to have students transform content and act upon it. And with that, I'm going to show something very briefly. And I just found out, to my surprise, that and I did not know this, the person who made this little 2-minute piece is actually providing tech support at this meeting today. And for those of you who are interested, he has a great interest in entering the linguistics program at this university. Thank you, Calvin Brown. So create a school in which kids have published 44 books, in which they've pulled patents, in which they've made films like these, in which they've built hovercraft and all manner, submersibles, and all manner of other things, like the genius of hip-hop. You want to flip something out of nothing, right? You want to keep it fresh, make it plain. It's really about making the invisible visible, as Calvin just did. I want to end with my final 2 dualities. One, I cannot speak publicly without mentioning Thomas Jefferson. Ever since last year, a certain state decided to remove Thomas Jefferson from its state standards. Fallacy of state standards, therefore made visible. And Thomas Jefferson, besides the fact that he did quite a few things in his life, he said the purpose of public education isn't to serve the public. The purpose of public education is to create a public. But my grandmother, Esther, who was also a recent immigrant in 1911 from Eastern Europe, and she was the first female she was 5 feet tall, and she was the first female taxi driver in New York City in 1927. And she said to me one day, Larry, you know something? There's 2 kinds of people in this world. Those who think there's 2 kinds of people, and those who don't. Thank you.